All right, I'm recording this event here today for playback for people who aren't able to join us, but for the people who are here, welcome. I'm Kelley T Woods, and I'm up here in Anacortes, Washington, northwest corner of our country. And currently, it is not raining, so this is fantastic.
All right.
And I'm going to be muting people as you join in here, so don't feel that I'm spurning you off, but we really want to just keep the focus on John today. And you're free to answer questions or ask questions in the chat box. And John, I'll just kind of monitor that and let you know if there's things that are popping up that are relevant to what you're talking about. And
Okay.
You're joining us from Missouri.
I am.
The Show Me State, which is interesting. I was looking at your hypnotist resource website, the wizardoftrance.com, and I saw that you had some interesting things on there we're going to be talking about, but you're really interested in the why and the how.
Yeah.
Regarding hypnosis, and so that fits in beautifully with your state's theme. So you've had a 20-year career as a systems analyst and then got
Yes.
into hypnosis, and
Yeah.
you've been developing your own models of hypnosis, and in particular, the reason that I asked you to join me in this webinar today is to talk about your manager's meeting process. And
Okay.
you know, I met you years ago at hypnobots.com, that somewhat defunct website now, but
Thank
it was
God. Yeah.
yeah. At the time, it was the largest online social network for hypnotists, and I'm thankful for it because it let me meet people.
Hey, for quite a while it was great, and then it just well, let's just leave it lay.
Yeah, we'll leave it lay. I think everything has a time and a purpose, and it ran its course. So, how would you like to introduce anything beyond what I just said about you? What would our
just yeah, I'm the guy who as James Haslerig said, I threw the baby out with the bathwater when I took a hard look at hypnosis, and because I found too many inaccuracies with what I was taught. I took my training through the Hypnosis Institute of Texas because I was living down there at the time, and it was just a case of the training I had was my instructor said, don't worry about trying to figure out how hypnosis works. It'll drive you nuts. I believed him. I went on for about almost a year practicing, having an office with mediocre results. And I said, this sucks. And so I just, I started figuring, I thought, you know, everybody's response at that time from HypnoThoughts or anywhere else, you need more training. You need more experience. Okay, I believe them too. So I went online, and this is back when Yahoo Messenger was big. I was hypnotizing people over instant messenger chat through text chat.
Yeah.
And what's the big thing my instructor always impressed upon us was hypnosis begins with 3 words. Close your eyes. And what's the one thing you can't do when you're doing text chat? Close your eyes.
Pretty tough to do it with your eyes closed.
That's pretty, but yet I was hypnotizing him anyway. So the very foundation of what he was saying, hypnosis starts with, was a lie. Okay, so that's when I figured, all right, 20 years experience, systems analyst. We break stuff down, we take it apart, we find out how it works, then we optimize it, and then put it back in place. So I started doing that with hypnosis. And I found out that the majority of what I was being told in training was inaccurate. I was given mind models that actually couldn't exist. So I started out, okay, well, we know how to do this. And it was not an overnight thing, believe me. I started gathering data. I didn't even start compiling stuff until I had over 100 data samples. And where I got it from, figuring out the reason that there can never be scientific proof of hypnosis is because it's a subjective experience. I mean, it's like trying to scientifically prove that you're hungry, well,
Right.
you're hungry. You can say you're hungry, but the bottom line is that's the only proof that we'd have of it. Same thing with hypnosis. It's subjective. So I got my data from asking what I call asking the expert, which is actually the person being hypnotized, the person experiencing this. What are you experiencing? Okay, what do you notice? So I used people from my office. I used people from online hypnosis, and started gathering the data and then correlating the data and finding out what it really said. And I was very surprised. But from this is when I wrote my first book, The Nature of Trance. And if you happen to have read The Nature of Trance, you'll know that you can tell how, shall we say, inexperienced I was, but at the same time, what I was finding. So I had a lot of mixed reviews on that. Mr. Haslerig did me the favor of reviewing my book, and I've never let him forget it.
Yeah, I
We have a lot.
remember James's reviews.
Yeah. Anyway, so once I got that, then I started building the hypnosis model, and I found out that most of the terminology I was even given wasn't accurate. So I, again, started from scratch. I started naming stuff that made sense. Conscious mind, okay, is actually a function of two different parts of the mind. So it can't really be lumped into just a conscious mind thing, which also is true of unconscious mind or superconscious mind or subconscious mind. All of those different terminologies didn't make sense to me. So rather than go through, if you want to see my mind model, go ahead and go to that Wizard of Trance website. But rather than go into it now, suffice to say that's what's not on the website yet that I plan to put there is the how and why that we are hypnotized as a species at all. Okay, I haven't put that on there yet. And essentially, if that's something that you feel is pertinent to this, I mean, we're here to talk about a manager's meeting. I can talk hypnosis all day.
Well, I think it is pertinent because you're giving us the background of how you arrived at these ideas. And the key ingredient is that you questioned. And I had a questioning mind too. And of course, I was mentored by Michael Elner, who questioned everything and everyone.
Oh yeah, Michael and I went round and round, and
certainly,
he was constantly eating crow around me, and he didn't like that.
Right, and but as Scott Sandlin has often said that Michael was also our tour mentor, and
yes.
This was true. But he really challenged us and made us think twice when we were regurgitating what we were taught in those original certification classes. Right. And that was the best thing Michael ever did for me, is to just condition my mind to really question, to not just accept at face value some of these things that were imprinted in our original training, especially for those of us that didn't come from any kind of therapeutic background at all.
Oh yeah.
Was a small business person, but this was all Greek to me. So I just, had to go with what I was taught.
Got to go with what you're taught.
Exactly. But like you, our clients are best source of that data, those lessons. So eventually you evolved your mind model and questioning some of these things that you were taught and started to come up with your own conclusions. And how did this affect your level of efficiency with your clients? Did it make a difference?
Oh, all of a sudden, I was no fail Joe. Okay.
Awesome. We like to hear that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
when it comes to hypnotizing people, once you get a real good understanding of how it works, then it's just a matter of, do I take the elevator or do I take the stairs? The thing that the most, sorry, my glasses were foggy. And yeah, that's wizardoftrance.com. Thanks. I would notice the stuff on the side. Most of the models out there really are pretty nebulous. But let me just say, it appears to work this way. For some, this will be an effective model. For some, this will be a fairy tale. I don't care. All I ever do is say, I never say I'm right, that this is the only way. My thing I've always gone by is however else hypnosis works, it works the way I say it does also, reliably and repeatably. So you be the judge, or definably and repeatably, either or. We can be hypnotized. Let me go into that. We can be hypnotized. The reason that this hypnosis deal is possible with us is because of our imagination. In my mind model, instead of using subconscious, superconscious, id, ego, I use imagination. I know what that means. It's that part of us that comes up with all those neat ideas and solutions, and we can visualize with it and everything else, okay? Well, the reason why we can do that is because the purpose of the imagination is to provide us with an understandable representation of what we experience, what we encounter, okay? Nothing screws us up more if we don't know what that is or what's going on. It does this in a couple different ways, but more importantly, understanding its function is in reality, using that term, to provide us with what reality is. Okay? We have two kinds of reality. We have philosophical reality that deals with truth, okay, and deals with fact. But our reality, the reality of any given person, is none of the above. It deals with where we are at any given point or what we're doing at any given point, and it's provided to us by our senses, okay? That's our reality. Your peripheral awareness is what provides you with what's going on that you don't have your attention focused on. Now, the imagination is used to, up to the minute, this is what's going on. When you are hypnotized, your peripheral awareness, input from your senses, starts to become diminished. And it becomes a duel between, or I won't say a duel, a cooperation between what we consider or what's input we have left and what would be considered preferred input, okay? Preferred input would be something that we trusted, had rapport with, if you will, that tells us what's going on. On my office website, I have an example of this, like the navigator of a submarine, like going under the Arctic ice, okay? All of a sudden, the captain faints, the electronics go down, the sub is still underway, and there's underground mountains there. So the navigator, all he does is steer the boat. He doesn't stop the boat. He doesn't start the boat. He just steers it. So he knows there's mountains there. He doesn't know what he's going to do. All of a sudden, it seems like a voice comes from outside the hull that says, turn left 45 degrees to avoid collision. Okay. And so he turns, and then a few minutes go by and it says, return to course, collision averted. So he goes back and goes, okay, that worked. Then all of a sudden, the same voice from outside, turn right 45 degrees to avoid collision. His resistance to do so is half of what it was the first time. because it already worked once and had a benefit. I'm not dead. So he goes right 45 degrees. And then a few minutes later, the voice says, okay, collision averted, return to course. And then when it says turn left 45 degrees to avoid collision again, his resistance to do so is 0. We've now developed what people refer to as a rapport. And in reality, what all rapport means is absence of hidden agenda, comfort level of absence of hidden agenda. In other words, what you're saying is the truth, and I can trust it. And it only takes 3 repetitions. Then it becomes a preferred input source. Now, preferred input source is one that we will react to no matter when it happens. Okay? Because after 3 repetitions of it working, reacting to it starts becoming automatic. So when we give suggestions to our hypnotees, if you will, once we give 3 of it's a rule of 3s, okay? Anything we do 3 times is going to start becoming automatic. Well, reacting to suggestion starts becoming automatic too. That's why our inductions work. So we have a preferred input source versus what we are normally trying to ascertain, which from our senses, which is what our reality is. If the preferred input source says our reality is this, the imagination goes, oh, okay, I better provide it. And it does. That's why we get trance effects.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Okay.
You know, something else that Michael used to say is how important it is to excite the client's imagination for change. So what's the role of expectancy before you're even getting to your induction?
Oh, well, rules of expectancy. Expectancy, that was what I hit on when I first found out about it. That I looked all over the place, even saw that can't think of his name right now, wrote hypnotherapy. He's one of the 2 gods of hypnosis. And it's not the NLP guy, it's the other guy. Dave
Ellman.
Ellman.
Talking about Ellman? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He mentioned in the book Hypnotherapy, gave it about a page or page and a half of expectancy, and he even did a cigarette puff type induction with it. But yeah, expectancy, what happens is when we expect something to happen, our body prepares for the expected event and then just waits for it to start. And this is part of the automatic reaction to suggestion that I'm talking about. Okay, given a suggestion, your body prepares for it, just waits for the go signal. In my book, I refer to it as looking at the start of a track and field foot race. You got the amount of starting blocks. You go on your mark, get set, or ready, steady, and you can see that they're about ready to explode into a furious running action. Sometimes they trigger off the wrong signal and they have a false start, which just goes to show that they're turning it over to the part of them that does it automatically, because most of your athletes will do that because they get the most performance out of themselves when they do that.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I like that, of the running started, ready, set, go, and that build up of that expectancy, and even that acceleration of their nervous system towards it. So the body is always responding to whatever we're thinking about. As a hypnotist, it's our role to create that expectancy that whatever we're going to do, the ritual of hypnosis is going to help them achieve their goals, to be able to make these changes happen for them. So I think that's sometimes where a lot of new practitioners feel let down, is they follow all the directions, but they've failed to do that really important process of exciting that client's imagination for the change.
Well, and as far as exciting the client's imagination, yeah, that has value. I have found that what has just as much value is educating the client on what's going to be happening and what they can
Yeah, another
expect to
way to do
experience,
that.
and let them know what their end is. I actually have the induction I use in my office for free download on my website. The pre-talk and induction. My pre-talk sets up the induction. Feel free to download it. That's what it's there for. If you don't have one that's working well for you, this one will.
Great.
Um,
Thank you.
but back to why we can be hypnotized.
Mhm.
I deviated from that a little bit. So we have two types of input that we react to. We have sensory input from our peripheral awareness, and we have preferred input source that we react to. When our peripheral awareness starts shutting down, our imagination starts getting anxious because it's used to providing all this information and it's not getting any. It's like that navigator in the submarine. Okay, then when we start feeding it suggestions and those suggestions prove not to be detrimental, but actually beneficial, make you feel better, whatever, then it starts becoming a preferred input source. Now, I don't know how many people know the role of the imagination. I said earlier was to provide us with an interpretation of what we experience, what we encounter. What that literally means is the imagination provides us with what we experience. Okay? All feelings, all emotions are provided as an interpretation. Now, Michael Elner, speaking of him, and although I revere the man very much, always told me not to present my model to a medical doctor because it'll ruin all credibility. Well, I'm sorry. I had been lied to so many times by other people in the hypnosis business. I did exactly that. And you know what he told me? You're exactly right. Surprised me. I was waiting for him to get, so, okay. But yeah, and as an example that I usually give in my pre-talk about the imagination providing what we experience rather than it being direct input from our body or from our senses, is a cut, a bruise, or a scrape that you discovered. Okay. And then after you found it, it's, how'd I do that? And then it's, ow, it didn't hurt before you found it. And now the body knows it's injured on, oh, okay, let's provide the fear signal. I'm damaged, be careful. So
Certainly, and I think, John, this is, another great example of it's the meaning that we put to things that really give us our level of suffering or joy, and the meaning that the imagination puts to it. So
exactly. The
and
imagination is what makes it real. Okay.
I love it. So let's
I
move
believe this
to,
because I've experienced it. Well, okay. Your
yeah.
imagination provided it. So which point?
So
Sorry, I meant to interrupt.
you developed these models that are working for you. How did you come up with the idea for your manager's meeting process? And the reason that I wanted to have you on this webinar and talk to my Hypnotic Women members is because over the years, so many of them have been looking for resources for working in this area, in the parts area. And there are, of course, some great instructors out there. There's some good resources and books. But when I ran into yours several years ago, something really resonated. And I did something that I want all my students to do now, which is to make it my own. I took your template and your script, and I've done so many amazing things with it. So I want to hear some of the history of that and
Okay.
how you were inspired for it.
Well, originally I started out, that was my take on parts therapy. I took a look at the parts therapy that they wanted us to do. And back then, I don't know how it's morphed since then, but they wanted you to give everybody names and visualize this uh, it started out as a conference room, but you give people names, how are they dressed, all of this useless information, okay? That, well, I won't say that. To me.
You already did.
Yes, sorry. It's called, so what? Now, some people, I think this is what Michael Elner called exciting the imagination. Okay, well, a hypnotic trance state is all about automatic reaction to suggestion without including the analytical mind. What happens when you ask a question? What part of the mind has to get involved to answer it?
Typically, the analytical mind is
Analytical
involved.
mind. Okay, so I don't want to ask questions of the person to interpret what their imagination is providing to them. I mean, it's a double negative.
Okay. I
So,
hear you.
okay. So then I heard about inner child. I heard about, all this other stuff. And I said, okay, well, if it's the job of the imagination to provide us with what we expect to experience, whatever I tell them is going to happen, the imagination should provide. So I got a hypnotic trance state, okay? Does not have to be deep hypnotic trance. And I'll explain what deep is in a moment. But they have to be able to utilize their imagination, hopefully to visualize. Visualization for a manager's meeting is not necessary, but it's definitely advantageous because it's easiest, okay?
Okay.
You have five senses, okay? And two major ones are your sight and your hearing. The rest of them are less of a priority depending on what situation you're in, okay? But sight and hearing, followed closely in third by smell, is what keeps you alive, okay? In our society, of threats, shall we say. And if you shut those down, okay, close your eyes. Oh, there goes one. Okay, listen to my words only. There goes two. And smell, depending on if you're wearing cologne or you got anything going on. But the bottom line is, some people think because of what James Braid wrote back in the 1700s, 1800s, whenever you wrote that, 18. I forget. I'm getting old. And I read it a long time ago about they hypnotized this guy, and way across the room, 50 feet away, was a rose, and the guy commented on how strongly he smelled the rose. And everybody thought the senses got heightened, and they don't. But I'm deviating from the manager's meeting now. So
I'll gently whip you back in direction.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
But that's what I started with. Okay. Essentially, it was a version of parts therapy. All right. All I did was decide, okay, if I'm going to talk to somebody, who do I want to talk to? I want to talk to the part of them in charge. I want to talk to the manager of the behavior. And if I ask them to invite the part of them that is the manager of that behavior to a conference room or a sitting room or whatever environment that they mentally create, just let me know when they're there, and they say, okay, they're there, then the imagination has provided a construct that provides me a direct communication channel to the actual part of the mind that controls the behavior.
And you just said something important. You said a construct.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing that a lot of people take parts, these characters, literally, which is using their imagination that way. But it's important to know these are metaphors. These are metaphors. The part of us that this or that. This is giving us a way to manifest it, a construct for it, so that we can learn about it, communicate,
It's
change
how
the
our
way.
imagination provides us with understanding. Okay.
Exactly.
But that's the importance of it, is this communication conduit that is actually talking to the part of the mind that controls the behavior. And we know it's that I test it all the time, because if it's an unwanted behavior, I'll have it change what it's doing and give the client an example of what the change is going to be like. And then ask them if that, okay, I'll give you an example. The client doesn't like to eat broccoli. Okay, we'll give them like that. All right, then we go back to the very first time. We can use regression or whatever. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's walk through the manager's meeting. How's that?
That would be great.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm probably all over the place here, but
All right, you're doing fine.
all right. So we start with hypnotic trance state. Normally the induction I do takes them down to what I call their safe and special place. And all this is a hypnotic platform, if you will. Once I get them there, I usually do a trance effect, offer to do a trance effect. I have them open their eyes and say, would you like to experience this proof of hypnosis, if you will? And then I have them go back to their safe and special place and look around, and nearby they're going to find a doorway. And I want them to go through their doorway on into their own inner sanctuary. It's what I call a conference room. There's a comfortable chair in the center of the room. Please have a seat. Just let me know when you're there. And, okay, I'm there. And parts is very interactive. Like I said, you don't want them zombied out so their body's not working, because you want them to verbalize or provide some sort of signal that, okay, I'm done, or what's going on. So I'll give you an example.
If I can interrupt here, we also want them to remember this process. It is instructional in nature too. They're learning more about themselves and what is motivating them or what is holding them back, and that these are resources within them, whether they're being helpful or not.
Yeah.
And I know that whenever I've used these kinds of processes later, people really reflect on it. Often it's their very first introduction to any kind of ego state therapy. They never even really formally thought about the idea that they're a multidimensional person, that there are different aspects to their personality. And I think that this really opens up answers for people in so many ways. So sorry for that.
Well, and in a lot of cases, they don't even know what's causing the problem.
This is so
they have a problem. They have a fear. For instance, fear of bugs. They don't know what's causing the problem. They forgot that when they were 4, they put on, they got a party dress, and mom let them put them on, and then mom told them to take it off. And they said, no, I like this dress. I feel pretty. I'm not taking it off. And then mom trying to get upset at them, and them being, and this is actual case, they told mom no. And just then a June bug or palmetto bug or whatever you want to call those big roach looking things flew up and landed right here in the ruffles of her little dress.
Right.
And she looked down, and that thing looked huge, and she screamed, "Mama, Mama," and Mama went, "What are you going to do now, little Miss Big Pants?" Mm-hmm. She took off running, ran right into a wall. Boom, about knocked her out. Ever since then, major fear of
that was the bugs. Trifecta for a phobia installation, wasn't it?
There you go. And so anyway, in incorporating regression in a manager's meeting is perfect. When you get into the manager's meeting, okay, you have them, you're in the inner sanctuary or conference room or however you want them to imagine it. have them broadcast an invitation to the rest of their mind, because the inner sanctuary exists at the very center of their mind, and they can access any part of their mind from here. Ooh, a new reality.
Mhm.
Invite the part of them that's in charge of the unwanted behavior, the fear of bugs, what makes them smoke, the part preventing them from losing weight, all of the different types of issues. Okay, we just want the part of them in charge of it. Provide a comfortable chair for them to sit in, look at that chair, let me know when they arrive. And then when they show up, I've got the communication conduit. Then we find out, well, why are you doing that? What's the purpose? How does that benefit the client? And they'll tell you. In this one case, it was the fear with the bugs and the big palmetto bug that landed in the ruffles on her stuff, and her legs got caught, and all I did was sit there and buzz to keep her safe, because that was not a little bug she saw. It was this huge monster, because it was right here. So all bugs became huge monsters, and she was a basket case before she met me. Anyway, to continue, once you have got that part, you find out why it's going on, and then I do, one or two things. I'll actually call in more parts to get more data, or I will get that part to change what it's doing. Okay, and I'll do it by providing the benefit to do so. Just like in outside of hypnosis in our everyday lives, if someone shows us a better way to do something that's cheaper, faster, more effective, we'll start doing that. Works the same way. If I'm going to ask you to stop doing this because you're not being a benefit to the client.
So you, John, you mentioned that you might call in other parts. So do you always prescribe those parts? Are you the one that is naming them and identifying the roles that they're playing? Okay.
I'm the one that knows the parts I want to talk to.
Okay.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Like with my stop smoking. All right. That was the first one that I actually specified the different parts to come in. But in doing stopping smoking, I actually address the problem areas that I'd run across. Okay, first I want the part of them that wants to make them smoke. Okay, doesn't want them to quit. Why? Okay, still the I'm cool, I'm accepted, I'm yada yada. Okay, well that's the way it was when you were a kid. Say again.
That's the part that's maintaining the habit.
Exactly.
Right.
Then the next part is, or what do we do instead? Okay, creative side. Hey, come on in. We're going to need an alternative activity to replace, because we're not going to be smoking anymore, but it needs to provide the same, if not better, outcome than the smoking behavior did. And I have them put their heads together and talk about it. Let me know when the decision of what the new behavior has been reached. It needs to be unanimous. And that includes the client, the part of them that used to make them smoke, and the creative part. And they'll be real surprised, because conversations go on that they're not generating.
Right.
Okay. So they all agree on what the replacement's going to be. Okay, we got that. Now, what's the next biggest one? Whenever someone is trying to make us change something, what part of us comes out? The stubborn part.
Stubborn part.
So I have them invite the stubborn part of them. Part that maintains the lists of what they will do and what they won't do, and then uses their heels, digs in their heels to enforce that list. Let's take the smoking activity off that list and put it on the list of things they won't do, then enforce it by digging in their heels if they try.
John, at this point, I want to tell you how that little gem has changed a lot of how I work in all kinds of topics, these lists, because I've expanded it, and I have that stubborn part actually show those lists to the client. And then I give some examples of ordinary things that they know they do
That's
all the
good. Yeah.
time. And then a list of things that they don't do, and even some things they never even imagined that they don't do, but they're so horrible, they're so against their morals or their values that there's no way they'd ever do that. So I really let them see that they have these choices that they, and some things have changed. There are things they used to do that they no longer do that have been moved over, or things they never thought they would do that they do now happily. And so that little model can be applied to any kind of habit change, right? Whether
Exactly.
it's smoking, drinking, eating preferences, any kind of behavior that a person wants to change. And what a great visual that is. And I've had clients even take it beyond our session and write some of those lists out and do a ritual of moving that unwanted behavior over there. So thank
Okay.
you very much. I'm just going to go on record of
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine.
crediting for that idea.
Um, but anyway, you can see that inviting the different significant parts or the parts that should be involved. You know, smoking, I think we invite after that's the rebel. Okay.
Yeah, I have one more story to tell you about that one. You're going to love this. I had a married couple come to me a few years ago for stop smoking, and I incorporate your parts approach in most of my smoking cessation sessions. And so when I work with a couple, I'll do a pre-talk with them together, and then I work individually back to back with them. And so this couple had one visit with me, and I contacted them about, maybe within a week or so to see how they're doing, and talked to the wife, and she said, we're doing great. We're done smoking, but I have a little problem with my husband. And I said, what's that? She said, well, I asked him to take the garbage out, and he said the rebel part of him doesn't want to. I love that. And so, I just asked her, I wonder what part of you will convince him it's in his best interest. But,
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to how when we introduce people to this idea
Yeah.
of these resources within them, then they can start to play with them and they can really get creative.
Yeah. There's a couple other things that I do, and this next one is actually very powerful. One of the biggest reasons people smoke, they start out smoking for enjoyment. They start out for, to feel good about themselves, social status, acceptability. But after a while, it becomes a chore. They have to keep smoking. And this is usually the ones that we get. I'm tired of this. So what we do is, but they smoke because of stress, or they smoke because of fear, or they smoke because, they're looking for comfort. Okay. So how about let's invite the part of them that provides the calming and comforting that they're really looking for from the cigarette. The kind to where you're upset and a loved one comes and puts their arms around you and whispers in your ear that everything's going to be okay. Yeah. You're okay.
Right.
And it calms you down, intellect and rationale returns, and then you're ready to deal with whatever it is that was bugging you. And I have them have the part that's in charge of that feeling come to the inner sanctuary. And I tell them that, since they're not going to be smoking when they're upset anymore, looking for that calming and comforting, I'm going to ask you to provide it for them anyway. Okay. I want you to consciously monitor their emotional states. When they start getting upset or scared or nervous, I want you to provide that calming and comforting as we've described it. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is in a moment, I'm going to snap my fingers. And when I do, I'm going to ask you to provide that calming and comforting feeling at the level that will be effective. And then I ask the client, when they do this, you tell me if that's going to be strong enough. You ready? Okay, go ahead and provide that feeling now. Boom. And I said, then they'll sit there and I'll watch them and they go, Is that going to be strong enough, or do we need to amplify it? And they go, yeah, I'll need to be a little stronger. If you would, please amplify it. It's going to be replacing the, smoking cigarettes, so it's got to be pretty good. If you would, make it twice as strong now. How's that? Oh, that's much better. Will that work for you? Yes. Well, I'm going to ask this part to please make this the new minimum level of calming and comforting that you provide them so they don't have to smoke cigarettes anymore. Will you do that? Yeah. Okay. This is the way it is from now on. Now, what did we just do? We customized it to them to be effective.
You did, and you calibrated them and let them choose that level of amplification, which is genius. I love that. I'm going to start using it immediately. Thank you. Tomorrow I have a 72-year-old woman who has been a lifelong smoker coming in, and boy, she's got the smoker's hack and the raspiness, and she's going to get evicted from her apartment if she doesn't stop smoking. So she's pretty motivated. It'll be interesting to see how things go, but I'm definitely going to be giving her a comfort partner there in trance. So thank you. I mean, it's perfect.
And then after that, the protector, I actually have them, the regression in this is having them go back to the very first time they ever had a cigarette.
Yeah. Okay. And I love how you do this, because you actually recruit that part of them later to come and be part of the meeting. And that's beautiful.
Yeah. I actually have the older them who went back, who regressed back there and saw the younger them. I have them cuss them out. I want you to explain to them in no uncertain terms what a bad idea smoking really was.
Yeah.
Just let me know when you're done. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I'll talk to that. You just got told in no uncertain terms what a bad idea starting smoking was. Was that a pleasant experience for you? No. Well, if you'll become a part of this team, I'm going to offer you, not only will you be the benefit to help them be the non-smoker, but I'll offer you an opportunity for some payback. If they even think about smoking a cigarette again, I want you to let them know in no uncertain terms what a bad idea that is. And it's okay if you enjoy it while you do it.
Yep. And we know in particular, teenagers love to harass adults, right?
Exactly.
So that's great. And I like the way that you inspire that regression, because it's dissociated, and it also affords opportunity if there was something going on in that person's life at that time that was traumatic or stressful, that the present adult self can be a resource, can go back and even do some inner child work. I've had that happen often. So there's so much flexibility allowed. We know so many times when people present with something like smoking cessation, well, that's just the symptom. That's a layer, besides being a habit, of things going on, things they've been dealing with maybe for years. And once we're successful in helping them with changing that habit, then they could even continue with us and resolve some of those other problems.
Okay.
So, yeah, I love this. There's another thing that you do, and with your smoking program that I really appreciated too, is that you attend to the associations, the triggers in their daily life that remind them to smoke, that are tied to that habit.
Well, yeah, and there's a reason why.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I went there specifically because I found out smoking is not about nicotine. Nicotine's out of your body in 3 days. It's not physically addictive to humans. Okay. But what has actually happened is, if you remember, that anything we do repetitiously after 3 times starts becoming automatic. The example I give of this, and of course it's easy for me to say, I like to prove it, give an example. And you might have seen this before. If you'll play along, the people listening can play along. Do me a favor, spell the word stop out loud.
S-T-O-P.
Okay. Spell shop. And again, everybody listening, go ahead, follow along. It won't hurt you.
S-H-O-P.
Spell crop.
SCROP.
And what do you do when you come to a green light?
STOP.
Green means go.
I totally fell for it. That's
Okay.
awesome.
It's an old
That's a
joke,
great,
but that's why it works.
yeah.
Okay. Anything we do 3 times starts becoming automatic. Now, how many repetitions does our smoking behavior have?
Millions?
Thousands.
Yeah. If you're talking
So,
decades smoking.
so in reality, it's the triggers that make us smoke. The things that we associate with smoking are actually what make us continue, because smoking becomes automatic. There's examples of this if you've ever seen or known anybody who lit up a cigarette only to find out they already had one burning in the ashtray.
Right.
Okay. So you break the triggers, they forget to smoke.
It's
um,
fantastic.
Now, the big problem is, and this is why I went to 2-session format, nobody can remember all the triggers. They can try, okay? But nobody remembers all of them. So what happens is after your first session, and they're all off and everything else, all of a sudden they hit a trigger that they didn't mention. And it's usually just one, sometimes 2, but mostly just one. There's always one, okay, that they forgot about or they didn't mention and we didn't deal with. So that's why I tell them 2-session format. After the first session, you get a test drive. If
I
you
like that
happen,
frame rather
and
than a
here is
booster.
the gold of this, if you happen to run into a craving, you hit a trigger that we missed, don't worry about it. But don't go ape on anybody either. You can take a couple drags to tide yourself over. It won't screw up what we've already done. Just write down what it was. We'll take care of it the next session and you're done.
Okay.
And I haven't had mixed results with that. In being mixed in the people that said, well, okay, I started smoking after my first session. It's not going to work for me. But I hope they at least call. Most of them, I'll say most of them do. If they're not going to show up for the second session. So I had one lady who, the day of, she called me up and said, crying, I'm sorry, I'm not going to show up. This ain't working for me. I've been smoking. I said, oh, really? How many cigarettes have you had since our last session? She goes, 4. I said, wait a minute, you were smoking 2 packs a day. Now you've had 4 cigarettes in 3 days and you think that's bad? And she goes, well, I said, when are you smoking? When I put on my makeup. And I said, that wasn't on your list. She goes, oh yeah, you're right. Come on in, we'll take care of it. How about, we can still be a non-smoker. So she comes in. Sure enough, that was the only trigger, but what she do every day. And we broke that trigger, and then it was fine. She called me a week later and said, thank you, because I was ready to give up. And I said, I told you.
Yeah, we want our clients to be successful because then we're successful, and that's one
Exactly.
that we're doing this. And I think that there are many models for smoking sessions. Sometimes I do have a client who knocks it off in 1. Sometimes we use up to 3. My
There are
particular
no 2
program,
people the same.
exactly. I offer 1 to 3 sessions for the same price. It doesn't matter, and that seems to be a good flexible model for myself and for my clients too.
Yeah,
And
that actually,
I typically use your parts approach in my first session, unless when they appear, it's obvious that they're really not ready to quit that day. And then we'll need to use the session for priming and getting them ready for their quit date. So, but I think
that's
it's so
actually a real
important.
good idea. I
Yeah,
like that.
and it works great. And it takes a little bit of that pressure off of them. So they know they're going to get the support, and I'm going to be teaching them some things that they can already start to practice. And typically by the time they return within the week, they've already reduced their consumption, by quite a bit. And we already have that rapport set, and the repetition of them sitting in my hypno chair again is
Yeah.
powerful. So we appreciate that too.
Yeah.
So
So anyway, that's the deal with the managers meeting. It's literally talking to the parts of them in charge of the behavior. Now, there's two things that I want to add. Uh, Number one, reasons for change. The strongest reason for the behavior to change is that the behavior is actually a punishment instead of a instead of a benefit. Okay?
it's a great distinction.
Just like we don't like to be the bad guy, those little parts that we're calling up are us. They don't like to be the bad guy either. The base purpose, it appears, of all these managers is to provide benefit. The purpose behind any behavior we have is to provide a benefit. There was a reason it was created.
Mhm.
Behaviors just, we didn't have any when we were born. Okay, all behaviors were learned, and they were supposed to be beneficial when they were. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. Something that was a benefit back then is not a benefit in the here and now. So if you can see where the behavior is detrimental, all you got to do is say, stop being a punishment.
Yeah, I
They're,
like that frame.
okay. Now, sometimes people punish themselves. Okay. I mean, as little kids, we're told, the reason I'm punishing you is you can't feel better until I do. I was one of those. That's what my parents told me. Took the guilt off them, right? So if it's punishment, we're punishing ourselves so we can feel better. Just nobody tells us that the punishment's supposed to stop.
Right.
As an example, I was doing years ago, I did this lady weight loss. She was 32 years old, about 60 pounds overweight. She wanted to lose the weight because she wanted to find somebody, get married, and yada yada. She was 32 years old so far, and it wasn't working every time. And here's a telltale symptom: every time she lost 5 pounds, she gained back 10. Okay, so every time she tried to do good, she was stabbing herself in the foot. So she couldn't understand it. That's why she came to me. Come to find out, when she was 15 years old, starting to really get into boys, she told her mother that she wanted to have sex with a boy. And her mother told her, justifiably at the time, at 15, that would be a fate worse than death.
Oh my goodness.
Teenage pregnancy, right? That's what mom was worried about. Well, daughter took it to heart. So in her body was protecting her ever since from a fate worse than death. Well, being adult, she understood. So when she didn't remember or know that was the cause. The part of her that was preventing her from losing weight told us that. But when we corrected it, okay, that might have been true for a 15-year-old, but a 32-year-old, she has a right to get a husband, have sex, to have kids, the whole thing. And you're punishing her for something that's not her fault, or that wasn't her fault. And it's time for the punishment to end now. Well, after that session, she started dropping weight like a stone.
Right.
That's
Things shifted.
But again, it's like I said, a lot of times they don't even know what's going on.
Yeah, and through parts we can make these discoveries, we can explore, we can communicate. And I think also, one of the most powerful benefits of working in a parts medium is that we can get those inner resources for a person. And I think that was one of the reasons that made your approach appeal to me. Is one of the reasons why I created a a similar program that I call archetype alignment, which just elicits some archetype resources within a person, because people were introducing their clients to the parts um, modality through focusing on problematic parts. And I think that to lead with a solution is makes so much more sense to me. So you're bringing out this comforting part you're talking about. You're bringing about an inner warrior. You're bringing out the creative resources of a person. And when they have those around them, they're going to be much more able to deal with whatever comes up with, but
Right.
also to be able to start to even imagining the changes that they want. Because you know we've dealt with people that can't even imagine those possibilities. They're so entrenched in disappointment and failure. And so
Okay.
we go exciting the imagination for these possibilities, and parts work is a wonderful place to do it.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I told you there was two things. That was the first one.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Tell us the other one, John.
the second one is, how about if you don't need hypnosis to do change with parts?
Yeah. Are you reading Tamalinda's question there?
Depth of hypnosis. Well,
Kind of related.
in a nutshell, depth of hypnosis is just how much your peripheral awareness is shut down, what you're aware of. Okay. Now, consequently, preferred input choice becomes the only one left. Suggestion. Okay. Becomes a preferred input mode or preferred income source, input source. And with your senses not telling you anything, then that's the only one you have. And you are literally defining their reality, because their imagination is making whatever you say true. That's what depth of trance is. You're shutting down the awareness of the body. So hopefully we answered that. The last one, though, is managers meeting without hypnosis. What made sense to me was the fact that I'm dealing with what I call the judgmental mind, the behavior decision center, okay, with parts therapy, or with managers meeting, if you will. In dealing with that part's always aware. That part knows, I mean, it's calling shots for us as far as what we put our attention on and everything else. So it made sense to me that I should be able to talk to it outside of hypnotic trance state and get change. I experimented with it, and I called it the comfort adjustment technique. It was included with the manager's meeting protocol that people bought from my website. And basically, it's just a manager's meeting where we don't get feedback from the manager. We get feedback from the client. I'll give you an example. How I first tested it. It's, to me, the value of a hypnosis model is you can use it to extrapolate. Okay. If this works in the model, it should work this way too. So I was at, this is my favorite story, 12 years ago. I was in a Jason's Deli. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. It's just a place to eat where they make you custom sandwiches, and they have a salad bar. Nice place to eat. I went up to the cash register to order my sandwich, and she said, and I got a salad. She says, okay, by the way, pickles, the dill pickle spears are down on the salad bar now. Instead of people having to ask for extra pickles, we just put them on the salad bar. So I went down and was getting my salad, and I looked, no pickles. I was feeling kind of froggy that day anyway. So I walked back up to the cashier and I said, you lied to me. There's no pickles down there. She goes, well, we have to go find out. And she come out from around the cash register, and it was quite a long walk down to the salad bar. And I noticed she had a horrible limp. I mean, she was, and I'm going, oh God, I felt about this big, And insult to injury, she showed me where the pickles were on the salad bar. They were beneath the level of the liquid, so I couldn't see them.
Mhm.
So I really felt bad. And so I said, I'm going to see if I can't do something for her. I said, I noticed that you're kind of walking with a limp. Does that hurt you? And I said, I'm sorry to make you walk all the way down here. She goes, no, hey, I got to do my job. She goes, yeah, 5 years ago, I got into a traffic accident. And my hip was crushed. It has healed as much as it's going to heal. Uh, it still hurts. The doctor says, here's some pills that I can't take and work at the same time because they wipe me out. So I just got to kind of grin and bear it with aspirin and stuff until I get home, and then I'll pop one of those, and then it's the next morning. That's my life. And I said, if we could change the way that that felt so it wasn't uncomfortable, that pain signal that you're feeling, would that be okay? She goes, you can do that? And I says, well, I would like to give it a shot, if you don't mind. She goes, well, I really don't have time to be hypnotized. I said, no, just let me talk to you. 30 seconds. She goes, okay. So I forget what her name is now. Let's call her Beth. I says, I just looked at her midsection and said, the part of Beth that is causing her this pain signal when she walks from her hip, I'm going to update you and let you know that the healing, whatever healing is going to take place, is complete. There is no reason for you to provide this pain signal. It is not being a benefit, it is actually punishing her. She has to work for a living in order to survive, and you're punishing that effort. And I'm going to ask you to stop. If you feel you still need to provide a pain signal, I want you to provide one that's more comfortable for her to experience. Something that is actually going to be a benefit to her instead of a detriment. Now, Beth, I'm going to ask you, in a moment, I'll snap my fingers and I'm going to ask this part of you to put it in place. And I'm just going to ask you to take a couple steps, tell me what's different. If you would, go ahead and make that change now. Beth, if you would, take a couple steps. And her eyes got that big. She goes, barely tingles now. And then she walked way up toward her cash register and walked back toward me. And then she goes, man, that's amazing. What did you do? How long will it last? And I said, the rest of your natural life, if it's okay. And she goes, okay, thank you. Oh my God. So I used to eat there occasionally, and I'd run into her occasionally. And the last time I ran into it, 6 years had gone by. She says that I don't feel it at all anymore. I walk normal. Look.
Right. And I love her immediate reaction was that it barely tingles. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that part literally shifted and made her feel that pain more comfortably, exactly as you instructed. So, what a
Now,
beautiful story.
I have
I
one
love
other.
that.
I have one other example, and this one is even a little bit more dramatic. I did a house call. I will do that. An elderly couple. She was stage 4 cancer. Had decided to stop the chemo. I'm over it. But the chemo had caused her to retch uncontrollably. Every 2 to 3 minutes, she's retching, dry heaving, whatever. Anything goes down, it comes right back up. 2 weeks after chemo had stopped. So they called me. Would I come and they couldn't bring her in. So would I come and do it? And I says, back then I says, okay, $25 trip charge, just covers my gas. And I went and saw her, and yeah, she was literally had a bag that while I was talking to her, literally every 2-3 minutes, Ralph, and most of the time it was dry heaves, but she couldn't stop it. How do you hypnotize somebody who's doing that? Okay. Yeah. Focus on what I'm doing. Yeah. Hold on a minute. Ralph, So I said, all right, well, the comfort adjustment doesn't require hypnotic trance state. Let's check it out. So I looked at her midsection and I talked to the part of her that was in charge of the retching. behavior. And I did the same thing. I said, now, while she was having this, chemotherapy stuff, we understand why you're doing that. Okay. Natural, normal. But the chemo stopped. There's nothing that should be providing her with a reason to retch. So instead of trying to help purge her body, you're actually punishing her in her last days. So I am going to ask you to stop doing that. Allow her to enjoy the time she has left with her husband and not make her retch for no reason anymore. And if you would, start that now. I stayed and talked to her for the next 2 hours. She didn't retch once. I said, if you need me again, if you start for any reason again, call me. I will come again for free. Her husband, who was almost in shock, walked me out. She told him as she left, give him a $50 tip, honey. And he got me out on the front porch. He says, I've been a psychiatrist for 40 years. I've never seen anything like that. And I said, sometimes desperate means desperate measures.
And it can really be that simple.
It can really be that simple. Without a hypnotic trance state, okay. So when we're dealing with no induction, no deepeners, no nothing. Right. Okay. Yeah, exactly. I was just reading that's why I was sharing that with you. I gave the actual technique in my manager's meeting deal called the comfort adjustment technique. Yeah. But that's just to let you know you don't need hypnosis to actually do it. The only thing hypnosis is going to provide you in a manager's meeting is feedback from the manager. Okay? But if you don't need the feedback, all you need is the result.
So you could just give that. Yeah, and for those of us that work with cancer care clients, such as the woman that you described, simple is better. They're dealing with pain, they're dealing with nausea, they're dealing with the side effects of treatment that they're going through. And when we can offer them simple solutions like that, they are eager to grasp them and to appreciate them. And that's such a rewarding area for us to work in. So I love that. And the comfort adjustment technique really resonates with me. And often, we'll hear people who maybe have previous experience with hypnosis. A lot of times I'll get clients who went to a group stop smoking thing, and it was like they'll use the word like a switch flipped. And this is
no two people being the same. All you have to do for one person is go, you don't smoke anymore, and that's it. That's all he needed.
Yeah, right.
But unfortunately, we don't get those revealed to us. So, as far as generic approach, that's why I also say conform it, take whatever I have, if you can use it, and conform it to you, make it your style. Okay.
That's it. Make it your own. Paulette had asked if the comfort adjustment technique is a part of your manager's meeting program.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And so you kind of answered, that question I had about whether one has to be in a deep trance to do effective parts work. And thank you, because I think that
you don't. Not at all. Right. Not at all. No.
And there's such a spectrum. And we can also think about the idea that someone who's in pain like that, or nausea, misery, they're already in a trance, aren't they? I mean, they're completely absorbed in that experience often.
Well, and that's where, see, my definition of trance is automatically reacting to suggestion. So if someone's in pain, well, in my opinion, they're not already in trance. They've got their attention focused, okay, which is part of it.
Right.
But because they're not, when you're saying it doesn't hurt anymore and it still hurts, then no, they're not in trance. But that's just, again, my model, my definitions. It doesn't really matter. Am I using voice or ideomotor signals? I only use ideomotor signals when it's not even that, because with my induction, I have them tell me when they experience what what I suggest. I have what I call the I feel it signal. I have them lift a finger. When you feel it, lift your finger, and then I'll know it's time to move on. And again, that's included in that free download on my Wizard of Trance website, the pre-talk and induction. Okay.
So, John, do you ever have clients who aren't able to elicit these parts within the manager's meeting, that can't get in touch with them?
Well, I've done it with people who couldn't visualize. And I say that, it's like saying somebody can't visualize is the same as saying somebody can't be hypnotized. Actually, yes, they can. They just don't know how. We all have the ability to be hypnotized and to visualize, but it's easier if you can have them visualize. But as long as when you're doing a manager's meeting for someone who doesn't have the different managers just let them know when they show up.
I think it was from you that I actually, learned that phrase that if someone isn't responding to your hypnotic induction or whatever it is, it's because they're not following your instructions.
Yeah.
Right. And so you need to clarify that to them.
Okay, you've got somebody asking, how would you set up regression with a part? Once again, you're asking these parts to either change behaviors or why they're doing a behavior, but it's the actual client themselves that you're actually having to do regression. Donna, whoever the client is, Donna, if you would, give yourself permission for total memory recall. Open up your long-term memory. Go back to the very first time you ever did this, or you ever experienced this, or whatever. Hover over the scene. Do not engage it in case it's a trauma, but just let me know when you're there. I don't have issue with if someone's doing a trauma because I don't have them re-experience the trauma, but I go back to that set point because I want to change it. Okay. And that's literally what I'd have them do. If you would, take yourself back to just before then. Okay, hover over the scene. Do not engage it. Just let me know when you're there. And then I'm going to say, before we even go there, I ask the person if they've had some significant trauma in the past, what would have made it better? What would have made it so it wouldn't have been that big a deal? How could it be improved? I let them tell me what would be the best path to take, and then I just go and do that. I had one to where someone had inferiority complex to the max because of something that happened in high school. Pretty common. They had said something that they instantly regretted saying, but everybody caught what was being said, and they got a nickname off of it, a horrible nickname that stuck with her for the rest of her time through high school and whenever she ran into anybody after that. And I said, what would be, the best outcome? How could we change that? She goes, if I never said it. I said, well, we can't change the past as far as what you've done or what you haven't done. But what we can do is when you said it, nobody heard it. And so we took her back to that particular deal in the classroom. And just when she was about to open her mouth and put her foot in it, a bookcase fell over. Kaboom! Everybody turned and looked, and nobody heard what she said. Consequently, the nickname was never born. That nickname was somebody else that was in the class, not her. And then we took her from that point forward. Any other time that that particular nickname showed up, she realized it wasn't addressed to her because she didn't say it. And then when you're back to the here and now, just let me know. And then I asked her what the nickname was that they gave her. She goes, I don't know.
I
Think
love it.
about doing this, doing that. I
Mhm.
always future pace and have them, I check
Yeah,
my
and
work.
yeah, and that's vital to future pace. And I wanted to say to, in regards to Janet's question about setting up a regression of the part, I do that with the dragon metaphor approach that I use, which is, objectifying the part that's maintaining the behavior the person wants to change or release as a dragon. And this is from a process that Wendy McLaren came up with, and it goes through changing that metaphor, because when we change a metaphor, it changes the meaning of it. That alone does it. But sometimes, it's important, of course, to know what that part is really, what benefit it was originally designed, that's now
Yeah.
become a punishment, as you say. And if a person isn't really clear about that, then I will ask them to give themselves permission to go back to when that dragon first arrived in their life and see that younger version, see what was going on. And the dragon will go with you. So the dragon is back there, and then we do whatever work we need to do, and the dragon comes back to the present. So that is one way to regress a part and update it through that whole
Yeah.
process.
And again, since in hypnosis you are literally defining their reality, yeah, when you say it is so.
Yes.
So, understanding that that's what hypnosis is doing, you're defining their reality that they're automatically reacting to.
Yeah.
That was huge for me when I realized that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
so,
some
okay,
powerful stuff.
we've talked about,
Yeah, we're kind of getting near the end of this webinar, and if there are any other questions, if you guys have for now for John, please post that. Maybe, John, you could guide us through a short experience. You kind of did you touched a little bit on the comfort adjustment thing. I was actually starting to go there, but do you have something?
here's something I'd like to share with people, if it's okay.
Okay, sure.
The, the significance of physical suggestion. Okay. Do you like to be hypnotized, Kelley?
I love it.
Okay. You like the way it feels? Can I show you a real quick induction? That's kind of
Certainly,
cool.
certainly,
Okay.
please do.
Could you lift your right arm up? Okay. And I'm going to ask you to either kind of sit back or something so people can see your arm. Okay. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is, can I have temporary control of that arm?
Yes, you may.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to move it. Okay. And I'm going to I'll tell you to move it in the direction, and I want you to continue moving it slowly until I tell you to stop. Okay.
Okay.
So if you would take your arm and move it down slowly, just like that. That's right. Stop. Okay. Now take your arm and move it to the side. Keep moving till I tell you. Stop. Now take your arm and lift it back up again. Stop. Sleep. And 1, 2, 3, wide awake. How was that? You can put your arm down now.
I had to wait for your permission for that. That's what it was.
Yeah, I kind of thought so.
Yeah.
You can do that same type of induction. Again, it's just physical suggestions, 3 in a
Mhm.
row, and then you pretty much own them. By grabbing someone's arm and moving it, stopping, and then taking your hands off and see if they can get them to keep it there. Then move it
Right.
again, and then move it again 3 times, because it only takes 3. And you've got your preferred input source.
Well, and I'm pretty conditioned for hypnotic instruction, so I follow along pretty willingly. But I see that's a marvelous induction for online work, and a lot of us are doing a lot of online work. So thank you for that. I like it.
Yeah, I just figured that would be something I could share.
Yeah, that was fun. So thank you so much for being here and spending some time out of your Sunday with us. And of course, people have your website, wizardoftrance.com, where they can get these resources. And I know that you have even more than what you talked about here today there. But I just want to personally thank you so much, because what I learned from you really has made a big impact on how I work with clients, and not just how I work with clients, but how I perceive myself, and all the roles that these internal characters make for me. And I talk to them. We have many interesting conversations.
Hypnosis does not have to be difficult. It does not have to be complex. It's very simple. I started at the beginning of the program talking about why we can be hypnotized to begin with. And it's all because we're looking for a preferred input source to provide us with accurate information about our reality. So if you start making suggestions, this is the way you feel. It'll never be instant because it has to go through the filter. But when it becomes a preferred input source, that filter is tuned way down. Okay.
Great.
And you just, the automatic reaction to suggestion becomes automatic itself, so that they don't even, you say it and it becomes their new reality. Their body's adapting to it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. And I will provide the link for this replay for those of you that want to watch it again or share it with someone else. And John, I appreciate you very much. And
okay, well, take care. It's nice finally, being able to talk to you in person.
Yeah, no kidding. Hopefully I'll see you somewhere out there in the world.
Yeah, somewhere. I don't know. You're in the far end of Washington, and I won't go there. But yeah, it was fun. Take care, and hopefully somebody found value in this.
Yeah, I'm sure they will, and I'll let you know feedback that we get in our group too. So
okay.
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you, everybody.